It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. A Prime Minister pressing the brakes on the country's biggest infrastructure project. As Sky News learns, HS2's northern leg will be scrapped. No final decision has been made, insists Downing Street, but Conservatives from cities along the route plead for a reprieve. And as the Conservatives meet for their conference in Manchester, we hear from the businesses saying it could mean last orders for levelling up. Also tonight, partying in prison, the shocking scenes in one jail as its officers tell us they fear for their safety.
We get urine and faeces thrown in our faces, we get spat at, so we get things thrown at us, we get stabbed. An officer got stabbed a few weeks ago.
The fireball seen in Oxfordshire tonight after an explosion following a lightning strike. His latest day in court as scowling Donald Trump faces a judge who has found that he committed fraud.
What she achieved is just out of this world.
So good, they named it after her, how the woman hailed the greatest gymnast of all time went twisting into history. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. After 14 years, 6 prime ministers and multiple pledges that it would go ahead, the prospects for high-speed train travel beyond Birmingham are stuck in the sidings tonight. The HS2 rail line will stop in England's second city and go no further north, Sky News understands, causing consternation in the city currently hosting the Conservative Party conference, Manchester. Well, Downing Street responded that no final decision had been made, but the only question is when, not if, an announcement will be made. In a moment, we'll hear from one business owner who told us that it shows the government aren't interested in the north, full stop. But first, our political editor, Beth Rigby, has this report.
Smiles and applause for the conference cameras. This Jeremy Hunt's script.
Right now, we're focused on bringing down inflation.
But outside the room, the reset narrative being ripped up. Minutes before news leaking that the PM had decided to scrap the northern leg of HS2. Number 10 insisting no final decision yet, but the damage done and the day derailed. The HS2 rail link to Manchester was the embodiment of the levelling up project, hailed as transformative for the north of England, now looking set to hit the buffers.
For weeks, the pitch has been rolled. Whispers to me that the costs of HS2 are out of control and that the Prime Minister is a man who doesn't want to throw good money after bad, as one person put it to me. So scrapping the northern leg of HS2 was always on the cards. But the problem for the Prime Minister here at his party conference in Manchester is that he has lost control of the narrative, with a huge announcement being leaked and not on his terms.
OK, good evening, everybody.
With conference thrown into chaos, the West Midlands Mayor holding an impromptu stump speech, begging the Prime Minister to change his mind.
The choice, very stark. Either, as the rumours say, go on, cancel Euston, cancel to Manchester, but you will be turning your back on an opportunity to level up, a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
You see it as a great betrayal of the British people, of the levelling up agenda, and you also worry that it might cost the Conservatives a general election?
You're putting words into my mind there. I did not get anywhere to that. I said to you that we will not be fulfilling our objective to level up.
Are you just here to cause trouble?
And if that wasn't bad enough, earlier in the day, the Prime Minister's old adversary was back, bold and bullish.
Let's be prepared to make Conservative arguments again, even if it's unpopular, even if it's difficult. I want everybody in this room to unleash their inner Conservative. And finally, my friends, let's make Britain grow again.
A competing Tory vision that the grassroots rather like. This growth coalition of Tories getting bigger too, numbering 60 MPs, more than enough to sink anything that isn't a true blue budget later this year. 60 MPs in this group, this growth group in Parliament.
Yes.
Budget coming up. Is it an open threat?
No, we're not the mafia. We're Conservative MPs. We support the government. We don't go around threatening people. No horses' heads are going to mysteriously appear in people's beds.
This a crucial conference. 2 days down, 2 to go. Can the Prime Minister get this back on track? Beth Rigby, Sky News, Manchester.
Well, HS2 will now be much more limited than what was first envisaged. The full route was supposed to connect London to major cities in the Midlands and the North. Work has already begun on Phase 1, linking London and Birmingham, and is due to open between 2029 and 2033. Well, the eastern leg of the railway from East Midlands Parkway to Leeds was scrapped by Boris Johnson back in November 2021 over concerns about cost. Now Phase 2A and 2B between Birmingham and Manchester look set to be scrapped by Rishi Sunak. Our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin reports now from Manchester on the anger there.
It might have originally been a Labour vision, but HS2 became symbolic for the Conservatives, a narrowing of the north-south divide.
Job done. Almost. Not job done. No.
HS2 was meant to be a boost to all services across the rail network in the north, but after 13 years, that commitment has ended.
When Conservative leader after Conservative leader has come to this city and promised the people of this city region and the north of England new north-south lines, new east-west lines, new rail infrastructure across the north. It's no way to do things, it's no way to run a country.
Passengers in Manchester had mixed feelings about not being connected to HS2.
They're going to be hugely disappointing, to be honest. I think that's really going to be good for the whole country.
I think it would be more accessible if it actually came to Manchester. You'd be able to get to London a lot easier. So, yeah, I don't know why they've stopped it.
The scrapping of HS2 to Manchester is the latest chapter in a sorry story when it comes to the quality of rail transport in this part of the world. For years now, trains have run late or have been cancelled altogether, and thousands of passengers have grown increasingly frustrated. But HS2 wasn't just about trains for the north. It was an economic leveller too. Mark Wrigley owns a bar right in the city centre. He was looking forward to a boost in business that the new fast rail line would bring.
I think for the whole area of Manchester, the city of Manchester, it's not helpful at all. That connectivity for these big cities is really important. That's my understanding. And so I think it ain't going to help.
There's a big promise for the north. There's an election looming. I just wonder whether that plays into how you feel about the government now.
Well, they're not interested in the north, full stop.
The government says the money saved from scrapping the line will go towards improving these rail services. But with such a big promise, now in tatters, it might have to be seen to be believed. Nick Martin, Sky News in Manchester.
Well, our Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates, who broke the news of the Manchester route for HS2 being scrapped, is there tonight. Sam, Rishi Sunak speaking to the conference on Wednesday. Will he finally make this public then?
Well, look, Anna, the question of when this announcement made is just one of the many agonies facing Number 10, who, quite frankly, have let the agenda of this conference slip through their fingers with some chaos ensuing. In reality, what's happened is that the people that matter have made the decision to scrap HS2 north of Birmingham all the way to here in Manchester. But that decision hasn't been communicated to the Cabinet. That's why you're getting Number 10 saying that no formal decision has been made. But the madness of it is that they are telling other members of their own party that the decision has been made. So some people know and some people don't. And that's why it's so messy here in Manchester this evening. So to the question of when, well, yes, Rishi Sunak could wait until Wednesday in his speech then to set out the argument about why the costs of HS2 have gone up and how he'll spend all the money that he saves by this cancellation on road and rail projects for the north of England. But if he does that, he has to get through tomorrow, which will involve dozens of different media appearances and other events at which he will be challenged on this subject, meaning that the entire bulk of this conference will have been about running away from questions about HS2. No option is particularly attractive. Number 10 has known this conference has been coming for years, and they know this decision has been coming for weeks. Quite how they allowed what's been going on to spiral out of control with HS2, I think there'll be lots of questions in the coming weeks.
Sam, live there in Manchester. Thank you. Sky News has seen evidence of drunken parties in cells and heard from prison officers who worry for their safety at one of the country's newest jails. Five Wells Prison in Northamptonshire only opened last year, but already officers say they are short-staffed, and one of them told us there are attacks on an almost daily basis. 3 guards have spoken to Sky News and voiced their fears that a prison officer could be killed if the situation doesn't change. Our home editor Jason Farrell reports.
A drunken party in a prison cell posted recently by a prisoner on TikTok. This just a glimpse of a potentially dangerous problem. It was filmed in HMP 5 Wells in Northamptonshire, which opened in February last year. From the outside, it looks every bit the flagship modern prison. But in rare interviews, prison guards paint a different picture of life inside.
Yeah, so he's there.
They're risking their careers talking to us, but feel their lives are at risk at work. One we'll call Harry, we met secretly in a nearby car park.
How safe do you feel as a prison officer in 5 Wells?
Not very safe at all. We're lacking equipment. We're lucky if we get a radio to go onto the landings. We've got a very limited amount of body cams that work. It's like a lucky dip raffle.
And has there been recent examples of aggression towards staff?
Yeah, so a prison officer was seriously assaulted a few weeks ago. He was stabbed in the head with a metal spike. There's weapons all over the prison. They'll make them themselves. Razor blades and toilet brushes. They'll use pieces of metal. And there's a lot of members of staff that have absolutely no prison experience, so they lack confidence.
So who's running the prison?
The prisoners, effectively. The prisoners run the prison.
HMP 5 Wells is privately operated by G4S and is the government's solution to the antiquated Victorian prison estate, like Wandsworth, where recently an inmate escaped. Dubbed a smart prison, its X-shaped blocks with wider, shorter corridors are supposedly easier to control. But that's only true if you have the numbers and expertise to manage it. This is another 5 Wells officer who wants to blow the whistle. We'll call Sally.
How often do prison officers get hurt?
On a daily basis, we get urine and faeces thrown in our faces. We get spat at, so we get things thrown at us. We get stabbed. An officer got stabbed a few weeks ago. Punched, kicked, tripped up with the feet, hit with pull cues.
That's a daily basis?
A daily basis. Yeah, a daily basis.
G4S say no officer has ever been stabbed at the prison, and the officer in the incident described only received superficial wounds. But prisoner videos using smuggled phones suggest staff are under-supported. Here, a female officer on her own is dealing with sexual intimidation from male inmates. A recent independent report said the number of inexperienced staff in the prison was a major concern.
How do you feel at the end of a shift?
Relieved. Relieved that I've managed to get out without injury. I love my job, but what's it going to take? Is it going to take for someone to be killed in that place before someone says we need to do something about this?
Which is why, presumably, you're talking to me right now.
Exactly.
It's 36 acres and £250 million of state-of-the-art security. But the people charged with running it don't feel safe. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, G4S, which operates HMP 5 Wells, has responded to Jason's report. A spokesperson said the safety of staff and prisoners is our #1 priority, and we do not tolerate violence. Managers take swift and robust action when serious incidents do happen. We have sufficient levels of staffing to run a stable, consistent and safe regime. We continue to drive recruitment. The majority of our employees have more than 12 months prison experience, and we have a large group of officers on secondment from other G4S prisons. We know there is more to be done and continue to take steps to improve the regime every day. Our dedicated officers work tirelessly to detect, intercept and confiscate contraband through a range of measures. We are committed to supporting and caring for our staff. And we'll get government reaction to the revelations tomorrow morning. Kay Burley will be speaking to the Justice Secretary Alex Chalk live from the Conservative Party conference in Manchester. That is at 7:20 a.m. A judge in the latest legal case against Donald Trump has already concluded that he committed fraud in his business dealings. But the former president chose voluntarily to attend a hearing in New York today. He sat scowling and accused the woman leading his prosecution of being a racist. Our US correspondent Mark Stone is in New York tonight, outside the court from where Donald Trump has just departed. Mark.
Anna, I think we got a hint tonight of what the next year is going to look like here in the United States. The man who was president and could well be again inside a courtroom and screaming witch hunt. He didn't have to turn up to this. The fact that he chose to place himself at the centre of the frame.
Thank you very much.
Well, that tells you everything about the state of American politics right now, because this is his campaign trail, the courtroom. Donald Trump self-cast as the victim up against a Democratic Party Attorney General and the Democrat-appointed judge. Take those two facts alone without the context of the crimes, and you can see how his narrative plays well.
We're wasting our time on this trial with a Democrat judge from the clubhouses. It's a disgrace. They ought to look for the murderers and the killers that are all over New York killing people. And the violent crime that's being committed in our city and our state is disgraceful. And we're going to be here for months with a judge that already made up his mind. It's ridiculous.
It was certainly symbolic that he left for court from the building he may now be forced to sell. Trump Tower is the pinnacle of his empire in the heart of a city where he made his fortune. It's also the heart of a scam, mass fraud, a judge has concluded, massively inflating the price of his properties to secure loans. He valued his triplex penthouse at $327 million, based on it being 3,000 square foot. In fact, it is two-thirds smaller, and it's worth $200 million less. He claimed his Mar-a-Lago resort was worth as much as $612 million. An outside valuation put it closer to just $28 million. The woman who brought the case was on the steps of court early with the first word.
My message is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law. And it is my responsibility and my duty and my job to enforce it.
His strategy then is as blunt as it is simple, to scream witch hunt at every turn.
Trump lies all the time!
The number of trials and their variety obscures, he hopes, the strength of the individual cases he is feeding on a polarised country. And here, his property empire is at stake. And on that point, I mean, it is genuinely a possibility that he may have to part ways with his property here in New York City. The phrase that came out from that courtroom for me was rampant corruption, and legally at least that is not a point of debate. The judge has concluded that the Trump organization was rampantly corrupt, and as a consequence of that, he has removed Donald Trump's business license here in New York City, which means he has 10 days to explain to the judge how he is going to offset or sell his property here. Now, as always, there will possibly be the chance of an appeal. But, you know, politically, this is hugely important for Donald Trump. He's here because he thinks it'll do well with his support base around the country. But symbolically, this is a massive moment for him, financially and symbolically. He faces losing an awful lot here in New York City.
Mark, live there in New York for us. Thank you. Now back here in the night sky over part of Oxfordshire, lit up tonight with what those who saw it say was a large fireball. Severn Trent Green Power said that lightning hit a biogas tank at its Cassington waste facility near Oxford. Well, a loud bang was certainly heard, and then a fireball seen in the distance in these pictures outside the city. It followed an intense thunderstorm. Well, people in the area say they also experienced power outages. A spokesperson for Severn Trent Green Power said this evening a digester tank at our Cassington facility near Yarnton, Oxfordshire, has been struck by lightning, which has caused an explosion in our biogas tanks. Thankfully, no one has been hurt, and we're working with the emergency services to make sure the site is safe so that we can assess the damage as soon as possible. Just one hospital has spent over £1 million on cover for staff during strikes this year, one of its executives has told Sky News. He was speaking as consultants and junior doctors started their latest coordinated strike, which will last for the next 3 days. Our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, reports now on the impact in Reading and in Preston.
Everything you eat, and it sticks there in the throat.
Fred has been poorly for some time. He's been finding it difficult to keep anything down. But over the weekend, his health worsened and his daughters decided he needed urgent care.
Been down for x-rays to the whole of my body through the back. And now we're waiting for the system for what they find.
Good afternoon, A&E. Dr. Hughes speaking. Unfortunately for Fred, his hospital visit comes at a time when it's under great pressure. The first of a 3-day joint walkout by junior doctors and consultants.
You always worry that maybe the service won't be there when you need it for yourself. We probably would have to wait longer for it, and people would have to be mindful of when they're calling on it and as whether they actually do need it.
The hospital must keep its emergency department open with Christmas-style staffing cover. I filmed in this hospital quite a bit in the past, including earlier this year on other strike days, but today feels different. It just feels much busier than normal, and it's only going to get worse as we head into autumn and winter. COVID cases are rising, flu season is weeks away, and winter will soon be here. The cycle of pressure throughout the system is relentless.
There are patients of mine that I've had to cancel who were unwell, and therefore, where we would have seen them and treated an outpatient, they instead turn up in A&E or go to the GP, to putting pressure on the emergencies indirectly.
The A&E at the Royal Berkshire Hospital in Reading is also extremely busy. And here, every strike day comes with a cost to patient care and NHS budgets.
It does get expensive because we have to provide safe cover for patients who need our care in an emergency on any given day. It's cost us over £1 million in additional funding so far this year, and clearly that does have an impact on our bottom line.
Back in Preston, Fred's family are still waiting for a bed, but on strike days, patient discharges can take much longer. Ashish Joshi, Sky News in Preston.
The World Health Organization announced today that it is recommending a second malaria vaccine developed by Oxford University and India's Serum Institute. The jab would cost between $2 and $4 and could be available as early as next year. The WHO said demand for the first vaccine had been unprecedented, and the second would mean thousands more children could be protected. The comedian Russell Brand is being investigated by a second police force following allegations of sexual offences. Thames Valley Police says it received new information in the last 2 weeks about harassment and stalking claims dating back to 2018. Mr. Brand has previously denied allegations of wrongdoing. And Sky News has learned that the British billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe is now considering buying a 25% stake in Manchester United. His chemical giant Ineos has been battling to buy it outright from the Glazer family, but no deal has been reached. Police in America's New York State are investigating what could have happened to a 9-year-old girl who went missing during a 15-minute window at the weekend. Charlotte Senna was last seen riding her bike while camping with her family. Our US correspondent James Matthews reports.
This is Charlotte Senna.
How is the car embarrassed? He had bad gas.
She is the 9-year-old girl now the focus of a frantic search. Charlotte had been cycling laps of a camping ground around 6 p.m. on Saturday with others. Having gone for a final circuit on her own, she didn't return.
Literally 15 minutes later, she hadn't come back yet. And that's really when the nightmare begins. Her parents knew immediately something was up.
Charlotte and her family had been camping in Moreau Lake State Park in Saratoga County. She was last seen at 6:15 on Saturday evening. At 6:45, her bike was found in Loop A of the park, but there was no sign of Charlotte. 2 minutes later, at 6:47, her mother contacted police. An Amber Alert was issued for a missing child. It spoke of a youngster that could be in imminent danger of serious harm and or death.
We have our drones and aviation assets looking from above while our teams are on the ground. We had a bloodhound assigned to this area, several other canines, so I feel confident at this point. We've conducted a search of this park, and we're going to continue with that while we also search every other avenue.
While the search continues on the ground, Charlotte's extended family have taken to social media.
Keep sharing her photo and praying, really. That is really the best that the family, our family, can ask of anyone at this time.
Members of the public have joined police and forest rangers in looking for Charlotte. New York's governor spoke of a family distraught at the disappearance of a joyful girl and of hope that they would be a family traumatized but ultimately reunited. James Matthews, Sky News.
Now, finally, you know something's good when it gets named after you. And the gymnast, Simone Biles, seen by many as the greatest ever, now has a complex jump to her name, the Biles 2. Well, she performed it yesterday at a tournament. And in the words of one Olympic gymnast, it was simply out of this world. Milena Veselinovic is taking a look.
Danusha Francis-Reid knows what it takes to compete at the very top of gymnastics. She's a former Olympic gymnast, an elite athlete. But even she was wowed when she saw this. American gymnast Simone Biles performing a vault routine so difficult, no other woman has landed it in a competition before.
What she achieved is just out of this world. Like, I'm an Olympic gymnast, and if my coach had ever asked me to attempt that vault, even into a foam pit, I would have laughed. So I think that gymnastics fans worldwide a few years ago wouldn't have predicted a woman to ever do it. Only a few men do this skill. It takes so much power.
Called the Yurchenko double pike vault, each step requires precision.
So she's effectively doing 2 and a bit somersaults from her hands and getting around to her feet. She makes it just look so easy, and it's just breathtaking.
Under immense pressure, there's no room for error.
The strength required to pull this move off is immense. Get any part of the routine here wrong, and a gymnast can easily fall on their head. And it's not just physical strength that's key, it's also mental strength. The ability to perform with precision as thousands of people watch you.
And Biles has felt that struggle, pulling out of the 2021 Tokyo Olympics to focus on her mental health. But 2 years on, that seemed to have paid off.
When she stepped away from the Olympics and went, no, I'm not going to compete, that was, again, a really brave decision. So I think she recognised that she needed that time to maybe just step away from the noise, not be in the public eye so much, and do things on her own terms. So this is her going, OK, I'm ready now.
And what a show of readiness that was. The vault will from now on be called Biles 2, the 5th skill to be named after her, as Simone Biles continues to push the boundaries of what's possible. Milena Veselinovic, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the political editor of The Guardian, Pippa Crerar, and the political editor of the Daily Mail, Jason Groves. Look where they are. Among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front of The Guardian, about tonight's top story, the headline, Sunak accused of cancelling the future with a climb down over HS2. Plenty more on that and the rest of the stories when we come back. Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. And Sky News understands that the Birmingham to Manchester leg of the HS2 high-speed rail line is to be scrapped. An investigation by Sky News has uncovered allegations of chaos and violence inside one of the UK's flagship super prisons. And there's been an explosion and fire near Oxford caused by a biogas tank at a waste processing plant being hit by lightning earlier this evening. Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look, of course, at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines with the political editor of The Guardian, Pippa Crerar, and the political editor of The Daily Mail, Jason Groves, with us from now until just before midnight and in Manchester. Welcome to both of you. So, to the front pages, let's start with the Metro. It leads on the cancellation of the northern leg of HS2, proclaiming it Manc robbery. The Guardian splashes with the same story, focusing on West Midlands Mayor Andy Street's disdain at the news. The FT also leading on protests against Rishi Sunak axing the line. The Eye suggests a Tory rebellion could be on the cards. While The Sun leads on Strictly Come Dancing head judge Shirley Ballas, saying death threats from trolls have left her scared to leave her home. So let's talk to our guests. Plenty more papers still to come. Jason and Pippa, welcome to both of you. So perhaps not surprising, HS2 leading the papers, the awkwardness of the Conservative Party conference in Manchester. Jason, when are we going to hear this definitively? Is it going to be in Rishi Sunak's speech on Wednesday?
Well, everyone's very tight-lipped here, but I think it is, Anna. I think you're right. And I think that's the reason that they felt unable to say too much about this announcement. When we had a sort of similar leak about the net zero announcement a couple of weeks back, they brought forward the announcement. It was out the next day. They got on the front foot. This time, I think they feel constrained. I think the Prime Minister wants to make this announcement. He wants to make it in his own terms. He wants to make the case that there's a better way to spend this money and there's a better way for the North. And he doesn't want to do that in a sort of short TV clip. He wants to do it as part of his speech. And so you're left in this terrible position where every time a minister pops up, they're asked, are you going to do HS2? And they say, well, no decisions are made. I think the decision is made. And it's rather overshadowing the conference here. It's all very unfortunate for them.
Yes, the Daily Telegraph says that they understand the PM is to make the announcement tomorrow, which is obviously Wednesday for them, as part of his keynote speech at the Conservative Party conference. He will tell delegates in Manchester, the city most adversely affected, that the savings will free up more than £10 billion that can be spent on an east-west high-speed link called Northern Powerhouse Rail, as well as improvements to major roads and fresh cash for bus routes and pothole repairs. £10 billion, Pippa, it sounds a lot, but in the great scheme of HS2 and what has already been spent and what it promised to deliver and will now not, it doesn't seem so much.
No, and, you know, I mean, there may have been a £100 billion bill for HS2 overall, but as you say, just a fraction of that is being proposed to be spent on these other projects. And I think it's not just about the money that's being spent on them, it's about how realistic it is to announce projects, more regional projects, whether it's the east to west rail or more focused locally, now with any expectation of them being built anytime soon. And I think one of the political problems for Sunak and the government on this is that this is a project which was first proposed more than a decade ago, and you know, over the years it's been increasingly under question. But we're finally in a position where it looks like the government's going to scrap that northern leg of it. And are people going to believe, people up here in Manchester, are they going to believe the government when they turn around and say, OK, we're not going to do this north-south project, but we are going to do this east-west one? You might need to wait a few years for it. And unfortunately, as we know, we've discussed many times, there is a sort of a flagging of growing scepticism in politicians and politics more generally across the board. And so having that once again, you know, people feeling that they've been made promises which are not being delivered on is going to be really difficult for them, particularly because, for right or wrong, this is a project which became a symbol of the flagship project, of infrastructure project, of levelling up. And that obviously was one of the reasons why Boris Johnson managed to win such a big victory at the last election. Doesn't look like that Rishi Sunak is going to be able to use that as a sort of, a positive reason for voting the Conservatives this time round.
Yes, and they were championing the Towns Fund today, wasn't they, as a sort of, diversion, I suppose, from this sort of levelling up agenda set by HS2. But plenty of reaction. The Metro, Jason, it's bank robbery. This is the mayor there, Andy Burnham's fury, but also the West Midlands mayor, Andy Street, as well. I mean, what sort of reaction have you noticed on the conference floor?
Well, not so much on the conference floor, but Andy Street is as angry as I've seen him, and he is the most senior elected Conservative outside Westminster. He runs this, he's got the sort of flagship West Midlands mayoralty, and he has got steam coming out of his ears about this. We have not heard the last from him. I think so far the reaction has been a little bit muted. We haven't heard too much from the kind of Northern Research Group. But to be honest, you've heard it all in the last few days. You've seen Boris Johnson coming out saying if this goes ahead, it'll be a betrayal of not just the North, but also of the kind of levelling up agenda, which, let's not forget, was a central factor in the 2019 election win. So I think you'll hear more and more from that. And Rishi Sunak is really going to have his work cut out on Wednesday to convince people, as he believes, that this is genuinely the right decision, that this money will be better spent and that the North will end up with better transport links more quickly if they ditch the HS2 project, which, let's not forget, has had all sorts of problems, and invest it in particular, I think, a new line going across the country from Liverpool to Hull.
Well, the Eye talks about a Tory rebellion, quoting the Tory mayor of West Midlands, Andy Street, "I won't let HS2 go without a fight." While the former Home Secretary Priti Patel warned of drastic moves will lead to serious questions for the Prime Minister. They also mention all those other Prime Ministers, Tory ones, of course, that have lined up: Boris Johnson, Theresa May and David Cameron, plus Gordon Brown for Labour. Don't mention Liz Truss. Now, she was on parade, one might say, today. Pippa, quick word on her. Maybe we'll come to her a bit later on. But there seemed to be a sort of a second agenda, didn't there, today at the Tory party conference? A second vision for the future, almost like they're already fighting over the rump of the Conservative Party, having already lost the election and having given up on the fight. What did you make of Liz Truss there today?
If you're Prime Minister a year out or 9 months out from a general election, you want your Tory MPs to be united. You want them to be doing what they're told, singing from the same hymn sheet. What you don't want them to be doing is to divide into factions, each calling for different things. Now, what Liz Truss is doing, and she's not alone in this, she's got a lot of support among the Tory backbenchers, is calling for tax cuts. Explicitly, she's talking about corporation tax, but tax cuts more generally. Now, this is, of course, something which goes to the heart of the row going on with the Conservative Party at the moment, with Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt saying, look, we've got this 5-point plan, we need to bring inflation down first. That's the thing which is really taking money out of people's pockets. And the indications that that's going to start to happen later next year. But they need to free up, they're going to have free up money to be able to fund those tax cuts if they are going to be able to deliver them. So we've seen, not just with HS2, but there's been a series of projects which have been under discussion in recent weeks. We had the triple lock. We talked about, there's stuff in Hunt's speech about benefits potentially being cut. The NHS is also an area that could be looked at, productivity in the public sector. They're desperately looking around for funds in order to be able to produce that rabbit out the hat at the general election. I'm getting off Liz Truss, but Liz Truss was there basically giving the Tory grassroots, the membership, of course, who've elected her and not Rishi Sunak, exactly what they wanted to hear. And that would have been a distraction for Sunak when he's trying to sort of, present his vision at this conference. But also, it's politically damaging for him because there's nothing that Labour and the opposition want to do more than to remind everyone what happened at this conference last year, which was completely chaotic and led to really very damaging time, not just for the Conservative Party, but for the country.
Yes, and her, her sort of rose-glowed, goggles, whatever it is she's wearing, Jason, talks about growth and make Britain grow again and all of that, forgetting that we're really in debt post-COVID and that actually to borrow money now costs the government a fortune. And do the Conservative Party really want 500,000 new homes in their green and present constituencies? I don't know how much of it was a sort of a reality check for some Conservatives, but she drew a crowd and she drew queues to get in, didn't she?
She drew a huge crowd. She was more popular this year than she was last year when she was Prime Minister. I mean, and it is incredible when you think back. This was only a year ago that she was giving her big conference speech. And actually, the big conference speech that she gave was not that different to the speech that she gave today. The themes are very much the same. We've got to go for growth. We've got to cut taxes. We've got to get all this red tape out the way and build, build, build. It's almost as if the events of last September and October hadn't happened as far as Liz Truss is concerned. The argument's the same and the messenger is the same. And as Pippa says, I think that last point is the most important. I think in large part, Rishi Sunak will view this as a sideshow. He was cracking jokes about her last week. I think he largely sees her as an irrelevance. I don't think the Tory revolt will be that big, but it's a reminder to the public that Liz Truss was the leader a year ago. They want to cast it off as a bad dream that the country had, almost like it never happened. Labour want to keep reminding us, and we'll hear more of that next week, I think, that Liz Truss, in their view, put people's mortgages up, and they're still up because of her. And here she is back on the front pages, back at the Conservative Party conference, singing the same old tune.
Yes, well, let's talk about another former leader now, shall we? This time in the States, Donald Trump, front page of the Financial Times, sat in another court, Pippa.
Yes, well, I mean, I've lost track now of how many times he's appeared in court, how many different issues he's being hauled over the coals for, legal issues. He was in the court of Manhattan today, at the start of a civil fraud trial against him, and his oldest sons and the Trump Organization are all in the dock. It's been brought by the State Attorney General, Letitia James. Obviously, as you would expect, Donald Trump has attempted to discredit her and the process before he even reached court, suggesting that it was an absolute scam and that you know, the state of his finances was phenomenal. I mean, that's sort of a words he uses. He's always used during his presidency, and he suggests that this is a continuation of the single greatest witch hunt of all time. You know, the bottom line is with Trump is that there are all these various cases that he's facing, but what it only seems to do is increase his popularity with his base, because he manages to convince them that this is the establishment out to get him and that it isn't actually about whether he's done anything illegal. So, it will secure his position with the Republican base, which obviously will make it much more likely that he ends up as their candidate, taking on probably Joe Biden at the next presidential election. We thought we'd left all of this behind us 3 or 4 years ago. Well, it doesn't look like we have.
Yeah. Well, Liz Truss probably wants to come back too, doesn't she? So we'll talk about that a bit later on. In the meantime, let's go to the Metro. Doctor strike, a risk to patients. I guess people know that. We're at 1 million procedures cancelled, appointments cancelled, Jason. Any discussion of that in the conference today? Anybody getting to the table to sort this out?
Well, there will be some discussion, I think, more tomorrow. I think Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, has got his big speech tomorrow. And I think the strike is going to be hard to miss at conference. I think we're going to have a demonstration by doctors outside. And, yeah, I mean, in some senses, it's another day, another strike. There is growing anger within, and concern, I'd say, within government about the scale of the strike, the fact you've got the doctors and consultants out again together. The fact that you're back on sort of Christmas Day services, when even some services which people might consider to be critical care, such as chemotherapy, are not being delivered. And I think they're looking inside government for what they can do. They feel like the BMA isn't serious about settling the strike. The BMA, of course, denies that, and they don't really know what to do, and they're sort of casting around for new ways to approach this. There's some talk about going to ACAS. The two sides are so far apart, it's really quite hard to see how even the Great Conciliation Service is going to bring them together. It does feel like we're in for, unfortunately, a long winter and possibly up to the election series of doctor strikes.
Yes, a consultant in the Metro suggesting that pay over the last 14 years has been eroded by over a third. So, as you said, a big gulf to try and meet. Anyway, lots more stuff to come. We'll have more of the stories making the papers, including one by Pippa, in fact. The headline, Sunak tells the COVID inquiry that he cannot access WhatsApps from his time as Chancellor. That and plenty more, just a moment.
Look, it is the story of Australian nurses and British women, Dutch nuns, throw in the odd Kiwi, and other nationalities, and incredible American woman, who were kept prisoner by the Japanese in the jungles of Sumatra for 3 years and 7 months. Yeah, look, I had to write it as fiction because when I write stories, I like to write them using dialogue and being able to imagine the settings that you can't get described. But can I tell you, though, every single storyline, every vignette in this book happened. It may not, and this is the thing that I'm a bit sad about, it may not have happened to the person I've given it to because there were 500 women there. I couldn't write about all 500. But fiction, yes, those storylines you'll read about, they happened, every single one of them. The fact that they were in the jungle, that nobody knew they existed for all that time. There were Japanese prisoner of war camps in Singapore. Changi's the most famous one known. And so the people in Australia and in Britain knew that there were men and women being held in prisoner of war camps. They did not know about this one. Look, her name is Nora Chambers, and oh my gosh, everybody here in the UK needs to know this woman's name and who she was. She had trained at the Royal Academy of Music here in London, so a very, very gifted, talented musician. After a while, the women started performing plays and having concerts, and so singing was part of the camp life anyway. Just on those Saturday night concerts, they put on to entertain themselves. But Nora took it one step further. She said, we need the classics. Well, how can you represent Schubert, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, Ravel when you don't have any instruments? So she trained a group of some 40 to 50 women for their voices to represent the instruments. Incredible, incredible talent and performance that these women gave. Not only did the women in the camp become overwhelmed by it, so did their Japanese guards. And there are many reports I found and testimonies of how the guards were reduced to tears, hearing the beautiful sound.
Incredibly moving.
Yes, and those documents, those music that she hand wrote, it's survived until today, and I've held some 60 or 70 pages written in the jungle 80 years ago.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, the political editor of The Guardian, Pippa Crerar, and the political editor of the Daily Mail, Jason Groves, both joining us from Manchester and the Conservative Party conference. Welcome to you. And talking of the Prime Minister, your story in The Guardian, Sunak unable to access his WhatsApp messages from his time as Chancellor. This is for the COVID inquiry, Pippa.
Yeah, here we go again. I mean, the High Court ruled in July that the government had to hand over potentially embarrassing WhatsApp and Signal and text messages to the inquiry because the Cabinet Office had initially refused to do so, saying that some of that material that they'd sought was unambiguously irrelevant. And you'll remember, Anna, back to Boris Johnson claiming that he was unable to access his mobile phone, which he had to change after a security breach, after his phone number was published on the internet. In April 2021, and suggesting that he was too afraid to turn it on because it might be wiped and that the security officials in the Cabinet Office would have to do it for him. And the last we heard of this was back in July when we were told that they'd managed to access the messages and that they'd been handed over to the inquiry. Well, what I have been told, I've seen excerpts from the witness statements that both Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak have submitted to the inquiry. And what they show is, in Boris Johnson's case, that even though he was using that phone until April 2021, he's been unable to access his messages from that key period from January to, I think it was January to July in 2020, the first lockdown during the pandemic, that those messages have mysteriously disappeared. Obviously, we thought that this could end up being the case back at the time, but the expectation was very much that Rishi Sunak would be handing his messages over from when he was Chancellor. But lo and behold, he's not been able to access his either because he's changed phones several times and he didn't back them up. So unfortunately for all of us, we're not going to be able to see some of those communications that went on at that time. Both of them have suggested that others who perhaps the recipients of some of those messages, or indeed officials in the Treasury in Rishi Sunak, who obviously was then Chancellor's case, might have copies of those messages. But it's less than optimal, really, for the inquiry. And actually, I think the tensions that already exist between some of the politicians and Baroness Hallett, the chair of the inquiry, about transparency and accessing some of that information are only set to heighten with the with the fact that they've refused to, or been unable, I should say, sorry, to hand over those specific messages.
Yes.
We have got Matt Hancock's.
We've got a lot of Matt Hancock's to pour over.
Yes, we've all read those, haven't we? Let's go to the Daily Mail now. Jason, your paper, not you, your deputy, I think, probably. Britain is the best country to be black in. This is Kemi Badenoch, speaking to the Conservative Party conference, I guess, but also one of those, presumably, who'd be a runner and rider to replace Sunak if the Conservatives lose the next election.
That's right, and Kemi Badenoch's got quite a wide brief, and she ranged right the way across it today, and maybe even a little bit beyond, talking about business, talking about Brexit, talking about trade, but also talking about this equalities brief, which is where this sort of quite startling quote came from. She was making the point, really, which she's been making for a little while, that she doesn't feel that Britain is the kind of racist country it's sometimes portrayed as, and explain that she tells her daughters when she puts them to bed at night that actually Britain's the best place in the world to be black, because people don't look at your colour, they look at you. And it feels to me like that will be quite a big talking point tomorrow.
Jason Groves, Pippa Crerar, lovely to see you both. Thank you.